The Hawai'i Sports Radio Network on 95.1 FM and AM 760 presents Wake Up in the Den with Kulale Agbayani.
Good morning, beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den. Kulale Agbayani and Paul Brecht. Happy Aloha Friday. Happy final show of 2023. And just as promised, we have quite the show in store for you as we welcome our special in-studio guest joining us for the hour, the guy in charge here of our athletics, the University of Hawaii Athletics Director, Craig Angelos. Craig! Woo!
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, it's fantastic.
How has your holidays been going so far?
It's been going good. I had some family in town. They're still here. So been going to the beach a lot. I've been here 6 months, and I hardly have been to the beach at all, but it seems like the whole week that we've been going to the beach.
That sounds like Paul, actually.
I was going to say that
his family's in town.
An exact replica of what it sounds like my holiday season has been like. Family in town, been here a year and a half. Not like a huge, I don't dislike the beach, but it's not the reason I am here in Hawaii per se. It is a big part of the reason they are here in Hawaii. So I'm glad to hear that your fam is enjoying some beach time
fantastic.
as well.
Yeah, the temperature, I mean, it's like summertime. It's fantastic.
All right, we got a bunch of stuff in store before we get to the difficult questions, and we got a bunch of texts so far. So a lot of people are looking forward to having you on the show and listening to you and what you have to say. But first, I want to, start with some easy stuff, right? You're originally from Utah, so tell us a little bit about the area in which you grew up, and you are a former baseball player, but did you play any other sports as a kid?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time ago as I think about it. But I grew up in Salt Lake City. I played sports a lot. Played football, baseball, and basketball in high school. Back in the day, I was the all-state in football and all-state in baseball. I was the most valuable player in football. We had an undefeated season, the whole thing. But I always felt I was better in baseball. Well, I could go further in baseball, so I pursued baseball in college and played at BYU. I went to a junior college though for 1 year because I went on a church mission after my freshman year, and then I came back and I wanted to try to get drafted, so I came and played at a junior college in Whittier, California, Rio Hondo, and had a great good season there, and but then I didn't get drafted, so I went back and finished my last 2 years at BYU, and of course we played Hawaii during that time, and that's where I was able to come here and play Hawaii in the 80s and Les Murakami and play in that beautiful stadium they've got there. So did that, and then of course I didn't know really what I wanted to do, so I went to law school. Well, actually, I played in Italy for a while, and then I thought, well, shoot, I could play in Italy for a long time, but I got to get on my on with my life because I was getting older. So I decided to go to law school, figure that out, and then from there I worked in a small law firm in Los Angeles, and then I got into the NCAA because I kind of wanted to combine my athletics interest with my legal interests, because I liked them both. And I asked a lot of people, how do you get in the industry? Where should I go? And they gave me a lot of suggestions. And this is before the internet, where you could actually email people. I had to write letters, if you remember back in those days.
I don't know if Paul does, but I do.
Very, very start of life.
Long story short, though, someone recommended I go apply at the NCAA because they hired a lot of people with legal backgrounds. So I got on with them and was able to be one of like the 10 or 12 experts, I guess, if you call them, to interpret all the rules and regulations of the association. So you kind of became a rules expert kind of thing. And so I did that for a while, and then I parlayed that into a job on campus at the University of Miami, where they called and asked me if I wanted to come do compliance for them. I was like, I've never been to Florida. I've never been to Miami. Sure. I went out there, interviewed me. They offered me the job on the spot. I took it. We moved down there, and that's another story in and of itself, because a few months later, Dan Levitard, who you all know in this industry, broke this article and paid for play article with the Miami Herald about all these scandals that were going on there. Now, today, it wouldn't be a scandal at all. All these things are legal. I'm sure we'll talk more about that later.
Yes.
But back then, it was illegal. So I commenced a whole NCAA investigation and did that on behalf of the university. And but I stayed there 8 years, became the number 2 person there. And then I went to Indiana for being the number 2 person. I became the AD at Florida Atlantic for, I think, 9 years. I went to University of South Florida as number 2, Temple University, LIU. So I've been a number 2 person for probably 6 stops and been an AD at now 2 stops. So I've been doing this about 30 years. So it's all good, though. I enjoy it. I've had opportunities to get out, but being able to be on a college campus and work in college athletics has been my dream, and I still love it every day. So I don't ever see myself getting out.
Yeah, and now you're in the dream place to work, at least in terms of the weather. I know we'll get into some other stuff it's not entirely the dream. So all the things you have to deal with here.
Some good challenges ahead, for sure.
Before we get into some of those challenges, as we are joined in studio by UHAD Craig Angelos, you talk about making multiple stops in your career. So tell us a little bit about your wife, Kristen. I've met her, hung out with her a few times. She's awesome. And you have 5 children, or 6, excuse me. Elena, Alexis, Abigail, Austin, Aaron, Olivia. I think that's right.
Yeah,
Is it in that order on like their ages?
Yeah, it is. Started off with age, just the first 2 or 3 of them were natural because my wife liked those names. And then after that, we thought, well, the next one's the last one. So they might feel disenfranchised if they don't have an A name. So we did that. And then there was the next one. So that you can tell the last one's name's Olivia. And most of the time you spell it with an O. Yeah. But we had to be in sync, so we named her with an A, Alivia. But in college athletics, there's a lot of anytime there's a leadership change, there's movement. Whether it be a president, an athletic director, a football coach, basketball coach, we see that a lot, and so you have to be able to adapt to that. Sometimes it may be you may want to move to better jobs. Other times they may want other people in those positions. So having 6 kids and moving them around the country all that time was, I look back and think, should I have done that? Did I really screw up their lives? Should I just, I don't know. I still question myself on that a little bit for them, but they seem to have turned out fairly well. But my wife's, been the one that's had to, every time you move into a new city, you got to find new doctors, new schools, new coaches, new teams. I mean, it's really a Herculean effort to move a lot, it seems like, looking back. But we just kind of got on that train, and I was going from, trying to move my way up through the industry. And so I tell people, if you're going to be in college athletics, you got to be prepared to be mobile if you want to move up in the industry, because many times you just can't move up from, all the way to the top at the school you're at. You kind of have to move from place to place. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, but she's been really great about that, and the kids were, seem to survive. So it's worked out.
So I love how he's like, seems to survive.
That was the word that I noticed right at the end. I was like, the kids survived, and
that's
the
good.
important
They all
part,
went to
of course.
multiple high schools except my last one. Now, a couple of them volunteered to do that, wanted to do that in the city, but some stints were like 8 years, 9 years, and others were a couple at a time. So it was balanced out pretty well.
All right. And I know you've definitely answered this multiple times when you first, arrived. And part of the reason why I kind of pushed this off, I do need to note to all of our listeners that Craig has been almost the one that's been bugging me to come on the show ever since I kind of first met you. I was like, hey, you want to come on my show? And then after that, when I would see you at functions, you would always almost remind me, like, hey, when am I going to be on your show? Which is awesome, because I know that, like, especially in your position, not a lot of athletic directors around the country would necessarily do that. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe we'll just hold out, because I know you were doing your initial rounds, like when you first got hired, obviously. And then I noticed, well, everyone's kind of asking the same questions. So we're going to wait. And I think that's why this was the perfect time.
Yeah,
because
now you've been here. Off. Yeah. You held me off. I had to beg you to get onto your show. I'll admit it.
But no, I think that's important to note that you've been so gracious, and we're so happy to have you in studio. But now that you have been here for 6 months, what are some of we'll start with the easy question. What are some of the things, some of the positives that you've seen, not just in your position and at the school, but just, moving out here, moving your family out here. Well, your wife mostly.
Yeah, the kids are still
in
school and whatnot. Personally, I mean, who doesn't love Hawaii? The weather's fantastic. I mean, we've lived in South Florida for a long time too, but it's so much better than South Florida because South Florida has the humidity, and you don't have the humidity here. You don't have the bugs, some of the wild animals and whatnot here. So I mean, and the water temperature is fantastic. Now that I'm going to the beach every day, I'm able to monitor that. But certainly the weather and the people are very, very nice. That's the real thing that people don't realize. Maybe on the mainland, and I've lived in all those areas, from New York, Philly, Miami, Midwest 2 or 3 times, the Mountain West, L.A., Orange County. So I think I've pretty much covered the mainland. But here, I think the people are just extremely nice and generous to you. So personally, that's been fantastic. I mean, I think professionally, again, the people are great to work with. The community's been fantastic. Seem to have been somewhat well received by people. The fans are fantastic. I didn't realize the fan base here was so dedicated to their sports. I mean, especially things like volleyball, men's women's volleyball. I mean, that's just incredible. I think we were 3rd highest in attendance with women's volleyball this year, but I know men's is probably one of the highest. But even at other sports, I mean, they're rabid fans, and I think maybe because we're the only Division I school on the within 2,500 miles of anywhere, and people probably don't move off the island as much. They want to be local and stay here. So all that comes together to be a great opportunity here. And I think, and then financially, and I don't know if people realize this, but we are extremely fortunate in Hawaii to have the legislature supporting athletics to a certain degree. Many states like Florida, California, and others, the state statutes preclude state funding from going to athletic departments. And so they've got to, a lot of times they get their money through, certainly we all try to get it through private situations,
ticket sales, all that stuff.
Donations, things of that nature, your multimedia rights deals, your media contracts. But they do a lot with their student fees. Like Florida, for example, has a huge student fee for many of their schools, not all, but, might be, I don't know, $10 per credit hour, $15 per credit hour, $5 per credit hour, whatever. So they'll bring in millions and millions off their student fee. Whereas our student fee we don't have really a very high student fee, and it hasn't been raised for 10, 12 years. But the legislature is able to provide, help us with various initiatives. And so that's very beneficial that you don't see it a lot of places. So I thought that was a huge benefit coming here. So there's been a lot of great things here. Facilities are fantastic. For the most part, some of them are a little, need some refreshing, but Stan Sheriff, Les Morikami, the swimming and diving areas. I mean, those are fantastic venues, but again, they're probably 40 years old, but they need to be kept up a little bit better or a little bit more. We're building a new track and for our women's track team. That should be state of the art. Of course, our women's soccer team will be able to play there too. So once you get that done, I know we need to concentrate on our football facilities with our stadium as well as all of our practice facilities in football. I think that's the one thing that stands out that we really, really need to rectify. But on and on, or all in all, it's been it's a lot of good things to be thankful for in the athletic department.
All right, and a lot of things to get to with athletics as we are joined for the show by University of Hawaii Athletics Director Craig Angelos. We do need to take a break, and when we come back, we'll get to some of the questions that have been texted in. So if you guys have a question, be sure to text us at 808-888-888 KGU1. That's 808-888-5481. We'll be right back on Wake Up in the Den.
Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ulei Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ulei Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and we are joined by University of Hawaii Athletics Director Craig Angelos for the show today. All right, want to get to some questions right off the bat. This one we kind of talked about before the show started, so I could kind of give you a heads up about it because Earlier you talked about how you became somewhat of a rules expert with the NCAA. So this is because Paul and I were kind of chit-chatting about this yesterday as well. And I was like, we should just ask Craig tomorrow because he'll know more about the rules than we do. So a texter texted in about the men's volleyball national championship from back in 2002, which was stripped away because a player was deemed ineligible because he had played professionally in Greece prior to enrolling at the University of Hawaii. And by his account, he didn't get paid. He didn't have an agent. Basically checked all the boxes that I thought would still make you eligible because I thought you could still play professionally, quote unquote. And as long as you didn't receive any financial gain or all that stuff, then you would still be eligible. But the University of Hawaii did appeal, and then they lost eventually. So that title is still stripped. So I guess it's a two-part question. So one, of course, if you could shed some light on other avenues that could have, I know you don't, there's definitely more details and you don't have all the facts that you can read about, but if there are any other rules that would state that was non-financial benefit wise that could potentially make a player ineligible. And two, this is the fun one. This is the one that I think would make a lot of Hawaii fans happy, though, if we can just put the banner back up because we didn't cheat. So after you find out all the facts, of course.
Yeah, the devil's in the details, I'm sure, here. And when I was a rules expert, it was a number of years ago in the 90s. So, once I got away from interpreting all the rules for everybody, I still have a working knowledge of it, but not probably as much of a detailed analysis of it. But I, when these things happened out there, and they still do, when I was there at least, they go on prior precedent. Everything's prior precedent. Like, what have we done in the past with these kind of situations? So they have a whole database of situations like that, and they match it up and say, try to be consistent in their approach. So you're right. Not knowing the facts, it's hard to determine what's happened here. But generally speaking, you can play for on a professional team as long as you're not getting paid. You can receive actual necessary expenses even if some of the people are getting paid as professionals. So I'm wondering if there's more to it, because you can get actual necessary expenses. You can be on a team that's playing professionally. I mean, there's some limitations, but it's not unlikely or unheard of that happening. And I've seen a number of situations like that. Basketball happens a lot, where you might be playing on a summer team and you might have professionals on a summer team. So is it professionals, you can play with professionals, or is it a professional team? That might be the distinction. If it's a professional team and you're the only person not getting paid, but it's still a professional team, that might make it a little different. But if playing with professionals, like on a summer team or something like that, is always okay. So as long as you're not getting paid. So, I am going to look into this one though, because I want to find out the facts of the situation. Now today, you just call it an NIL deal out there and nothing would ever happen.
Yeah.
But back in 2002, now we're 21 years ago. But I do want to look into that to find out what the situation was, and I'm glad they did appeal it. But I'm going to pull that up to see. I mean, but you're right. People put up banners. You hear people get stripped of things a lot, or number of wins or whatever. Sometimes they still put it in their media guides, under the coach's name. Sometimes they still put banners up. I don't know if the NCAA enforces it that much. I think we're an association of self-monitoring. Mm-hmm. So they say you're a member of the team, so you got to play by the rules of the team. But some people say, well, I don't like the rules of that team on our team, so I'm going to do something differently. So I guess we probably could put it up. I'm going to check into that, though. I'm going to make a note and check into the history of that to see where it's at, because maybe there's some loopholes. Maybe we can press it a little further.
Ooh, I love it. I love that answer.
I love the challenge of that, though.
Yes. There you go. There you have, especially for our men's volleyball fans, that Craig is going to look into if there's a way or what exactly happened in 2002, why Hawaii lost the appeal, and also if we can just do what Central Florida did and just deem themselves at least we legitimately won the national championship. It's just we just don't have the banner or the record. It's not.
But there's up that they had won.
Exactly.
Did you see Florida State yesterday someone had mentioned that if they're the only undefeated team left after the playoffs and whatnot, that they're going to potentially deem themselves national champions. I read that last night when I was going to bed.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
Why wouldn't we be national champions? We're the only ones left undefeated. So, we kind of take measures in our own hands in college athletics in a lot of a lot of venues now, a lot of
And
areas.
that's why, at least, Hawaii, the men's volleyball team, actually did win.
Yeah,
And they didn't necessarily cheat to win or anything. They
Right.
didn't gain an advantage. It's just one of those technicalities in the NCAA.
Well, yeah, this was something you mentioned it, Koo. You and I were talking about where it's like, especially now with NIL and the amateurism portion of it all in question of like, okay, well, and it goes back to what you were saying before, past precedents, and that's kind of what they try and lean on, which I understand as well. So it'll be an interesting little thing. Either way, you're right. It's 2002. We won the national title, man. Like, we were there, the games were played, and yada yada. Either way, it's a fun little conversation and a phenomenal question. One of a few great questions that we got.
Something I definitely was wondering about. All right, here's another question from a texter from the 406. Aloha, Mr. Angelos. I have a question for you this morning. I noticed you were in Japan last month from social media. What were you doing there, and are there opportunities to expand UH's brand in Japan or Australia? This is from Jerry B.
Yeah, Jerry, you're exactly right. That's what we're trying to do. We're the closest Division I school to Japan, to Australia, to New Zealand. People have briefed me on that. I didn't really have all that, planned out when I got here, but we did go out there with the men's basketball program for a summer tour, 10 days I think out there, and then they asked me to go speak out there to the reason I was out there most recently is they asked me to come speak out to their a lot of their collegiate administrators because they want to develop a collegiate system like we have in America. And I had met with this group from Scuba University, is really the leaders in the field over there. Scuba is a town about an hour outside of Tokyo, but they have a nice university there. And they came when I was in Philadelphia. They brought a whole contingency out there because they were working with people at Temple University. And I met a lot of the folks there and was interviewed there. So this is the same group. Then they came out and visited Hawaii in the summertime, and I met up with them again. So they've asked us to help them, kind of craft where they're going with that. So it's kind of a two-prong approach of being out there. One is to help them mold their system more like the American system, because really the American system is really only prevalent in America. I mean, no other countries do it this way. They all have club programs. So the kids will go to school, and then they'll go play in their club teams and whatnot, and which probably works out well because you don't have all the NCAA issues and all that. So that might be the way to go. The current, considering where we are now in our intercollegiate athletic space. So that's one area that I went out there and spoke to them and did some seminars with them and working with them. But more importantly, I think for us is to try to, like you say, expand our brand out there. I was hoping to take one of our football games, our season opener of 2026. It was Stanford. Stanford agreed to go out there and play. 2025, first game of the year, because they're playing here at home. I said, how about if we take it on the road to Japan, maybe Australia, but let's try Japan because we've got a great synergy in Hawaii with Japan, and we got to expand our brand in there. And so that's where we were going. And then Stanford, when they went, the ACC called right after we played them here. They called and said, listen, we'd rather just play in Hawaii in 2025 because we're going back and forth across the country in the ACC play now. So we'd rather not take the trip all the way to Japan. And I said, okay, but I'm still working on a game there. So I went over also recently to speak to like the sports marketing director who puts together these things from Rakuten, I think it's called. It's like the equivalent of Amazon here in the States. And we had a good conversation, and they're working on that. They own a stadium in Quito where we could play the game. So we're just seeing what kind of effect we would have in football out there in Japan, because football is not really played as much in the schools and whatnot. So we're not sure if that's going to work. But we're trying to do that. We took women's basketball is going out this summer. Men's basketball went last summer. Men's volleyball went in the fall. We're trying to create a presence out there and a brand and try to take advantage of recruiting, not just for our regular students, but for our student athletes. We got a great baseball player coming here, apparently that's here this year. We've got someone on the football team, basketball team. So if we can access that as a pipeline also for top talent, top Japanese talent to come to our come here to play, as well as brand, sell our merchandise, be the university, the America's college out there in Japan. we really want to expand our presence. So we're slowly doing that, and we're going to keep it up and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, I mean, there's even like a UH Japanese Twitter handle. I think
It's
that's out
true.
there as well.
It's true. I think they follow me. They used to follow me if they don't anymore. Either way, that's really cool because, Koo, you and I have talked a lot on this show about, like, especially with football and the NFL trying to grow the game. And I know you're talking about growing a pipeline between there, but that also helps, if you're putting a football game out there, it helps grow football out there. And along with that, we were just talking about in the first segment how Hawaii benefits from being the only Division I institution within 2,500 miles of here. And similarly there, like you said, to be the American representative university would be really interesting, especially because, like you said, there is such a pipeline of great talent throughout many, many sports.
Right. Well, UCLA has marketing offices throughout Japan. Some of these are really trying to plant a flag out there, so to speak. But we're trying to do the same thing. But football out in Japan, from what I've heard, the NFL tried to get some things going in the 80s, and it apparently didn't get going very well. And so that's their concern is, no kids are really playing it. There are professional leagues over there, but there's no kids that are playing it, so there's really not a following there, So I think that's why the NFL finally, pulled out of it and gave up on it because there's really not a following there. So that's the question they give me is, can we get, they've never had a collegiate game over there. It's like, well, can we get fans to buy tickets? And so that's what they're trying to explore of whether we can get a following to actually come and buy some tickets out over there.
It's a fun conversation.
Interesting. Yeah, it'll be fun to see what happens. You did bring up Stanford and how moving conferences and how that affects. So we do need to take a break, but I did want to ask you about that Oregon game in the fall because I know the Civil Beat have reported that it's potentially in jeopardy now. So get some of your thoughts and enlighten all of our listeners about that. So we'll be right back to discuss on Wake Up in the Den.
Wake Up in the Den with Kulale Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to all of you, the beautifulest of all the beautiful people. It's Wake Up in the Den, Kulale Agbayani and Paul Brecht, and had to have the theme music because we are joined by University of Hawaii Athletics Director Craig Angelos for the show. That's when, before we jumped on to start, I was like, oh yeah, that's a surprise song that we're going to drop in the middle of the show. So I had to make sure we do that, and that's the first time we've ever used it as our coming back music on this show.
We have
so
a
it's
great
perfect
band,
timing.
as we know.
Yes.
We don't talk about that on these shows much, but the band is fantastic.
Yes.
That's so. I'm
Band
glad
and
you said
band, cheer, and dance.
Yeah.
I'm glad
Shout
you
out to
said
them.
that, because I tell people back at home all the time where I'm like, Hawaii has so many incredible things with their athletics when it comes to, like, the fans are rabid, like you said before. They are, they go all the way to the definition of fanatics. But that band makes the environment just so fun every single time. I'm sitting there during basketball games, volleyball matches. I'm tapping my feet, and I'm trying to stay as professional as possible, and not bouncing my head and whatever. But sometimes it is just too hard because they're so energetic, they're so into the game, and it feels like every single tune they play is right along. So they do such a phenomenal job. So I'm glad you also appreciate them.
Well, when they play the Hawaii 5-0 song, that's
my God,
far my favorite. That's just like
yes,
gives me goosebumps there.
Every time.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to the football conversation now. So just a little background for everything. So it was back in like 2014, so long before you even thought you were going to come out to Hawaii, that the 3-game series, Hawaii versus Oregon, with, home and home type of thing. And then things got canceled, obviously, with COVID, and then moving up the game for next season. We're supposed to play them in week 0. However, with all the conference realignment happening, that game is potentially in jeopardy. And I noticed, if the schedule doesn't change, we technically only have 12 games, where we usually have 13 because we play in that week 0 game. So we can't just simply lose it. We need to find another game. So if you could just shed some light on everything that's kind of going on with that situation.
Right. Well, just to back up even a little bit more, I mean, football scheduling is done years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much as 10 years in advance, maybe even a little bit more. And so, it's hard to know what things are going to be like 10 years out, 8 years out, that kind of thing. And so a lot of these games are set. And then if there's problems that come up along the way, you kind of have to make quick adjustments. But it's not like there's a lot of games out there, like to just go pick from, because everybody's locked in for a long time. Now, that doesn't happen in baseball, or basketball might be a year or two in advance. Most other people, you got plenty of time to adjust. But in football, it's very difficult to adjust because everyone's locked up for a long time. And so when conference realignment comes, they have to comply with the new conference's requirements. Some may have an 8-game schedule. Some may have a 9-game schedule. In Oregon's case, they have a mandate from their state legislature to play Oregon State every year. But now that they're no longer in the Pac-12 together, that makes it more difficult to play. And so they needed to play. And so they contacted us about that they needed to play Oregon State, and asked whether, there could be some adjustments made. So we're still working through that. But they're kind of, they're under their own pressures because they're going to the Big Ten and no longer will play Oregon State, but their legislatures ensuring that they keep that rivalry going within the state, which makes sense. So this happens once in a while, and you try to, there's really 2 ways to go about it. If someone wants to get out, they can always buy you out, but the buyouts are very expensive, probably upwards to 7 figures, because you don't want people to be able to leave. But conference realignment has gotten a little bit more common. So the other way to do it is you agree to push it down the road to another year. It could be 5 years down the road. It could be 6 years down the road, but you tend to try to push things down the road. So we're at that stage right now, working with them to see, where we need to go with that. But you're right. We got to get games here. We've always played 13. I think once in a while you could play 12. We need to at least have, if we play 13, we got to win 7 games to be bowl eligible, and one can be a 1-double of FCS game. We could play more FCS games if we needed to, which are a little easier to get, but you can only use one to count towards your being bowl eligible. So if we only play 12 games, we need 6 wins, and one of those can be an FCS win. If we played 2 FCS teams and had 6 wins, we wouldn't be bowl eligible because you can only use one of them. But we'll have a schedule, but we are scrambling right now a little bit, just trying to make some adjustments to see where we need to go with some of this. But we still have UCLA on the schedule. As you know, we're playing Washington State at Washington State with this new Mountain West Pac-2 scheduling alliance. Where we used to play 8 conference games in the Mountain West, and now we'll play 7+1, as they're calling it. Seven of will be our typical Mountain West games, and then every team will play one Pac-2 team, either Washington State or Oregon State. This year we drew Washington State at Pullman, Washington. So wish we would have been able to play them here. So we're continuing to make adjustments. Everyone's making adjustments with football now with conference realignment, whether it's joining up with the Pac-2 on scheduling, or whether it's working with our partners that are having to adjust to their new conferences too. So it's pretty complex, but hopefully we'll have a good schedule by the time we start up next year.
I know it's crazy that not only with obviously dealing with NIL stuff, but this conference realignment. I know fans like myself, though, would be kind of sad because this would be the year that you would want to see Oregon come in, especially because now that Hawai'i quarterback is at the helm with Dylan Gabriel. We talk about how Chevin drew fans for people to come see him, but you're talking about potentially a Heisman year that could be for Dylan, would be insane, and it would have been rocking over there in Manoa. So, but I get it.
Well, the hard thing with our smaller stadium too is when these schedules were put together, I'm sure they were anticipating Aloha Stadium, and you could bring everybody out. You could get up to, what was it, 50,000?
50, yes.
50,000, and so it would be a nice payday. And so that's why you wanted to have those home and homes to get people to come out, because you had big paydays here. And of course now with the the adjustment that they've had to make, which I think people did a great job at UH and other places of making that adjustment to bring it down to Manoa. But again, it's only 15,000. So instead of having 50,000 in the crowd, you're having 15. If you even think of 15, you really can only sell maybe 13,000 because you have students that get in and you have comp tickets for both teams, that kind of stuff, which is, but let's just say 2,000. So you're really selling 13,000. So you're going from selling 40 something up to 50 down to 13,000. And so whether you have Oregon here, if you had Oregon here, you'd sell 13,000. If you have, I think we had like Albany here, we were selling like 8. So is the delta between NFCS and the number one team in the country, perhaps like Oregon, 4,000 seats? And if you're 4,000, I mean, that's not a big payday, which hurts us. That's why we need a bigger stadium where we can bring these teams in, we can sell it out, because that's where you make a lot of your money is in ticket sales. You know, people like, Power Fives and whatnot that are selling out 60, 70.
Like Michigan.
They're making a whole lot of money in ticket
house.
sales. And so that helps us become self-sustainable too. So we've got to work through this quandary right now of having a small stadium. I think the fans would love to see Oregon. I'm sure Dylan would love to come home. I was getting on a plane to go to a game in the fall, and I was right behind his aunt in the line. And she had her Oklahoma shirt on, said Gabriel, whatever. And we started talking. But I'm sure he'd have a lot of fans that would want to come out here, and we'd love to have it here. But if you think about the financial piece, you know, you're not talking about a big difference with crowd size, since the most we can really sell is 13,000 in a 15,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, so it's one of those situations where if they did, well, hopefully we can push it down, you know, the road.
That's our goal, yeah.
But it was one of those, like, if say they had to opt out and pay, the financial gain for them opting out would be way bigger than the 13,000 in ticket sales.
Oh,
so yeah,
sure.
I get it
for sure, and that may happen too. I mean, because if we can't find games, then you know I'll try to work together in this environment. But if we can't find games, that's the end result. So
Positive Paul over here, you know me, that I'll sit here. 6 years down the road would push us into a time that the new Aloha Stadium,
right,
you know, would be open. Obviously, 2028, the target goal for the Kansas home opener. And in that sense, I mean, history has already repeated itself in a Hawaii boy going to Oregon, a great quarterback. You know, Marcus was there. Now Dylan's there. What's to say 6 years down the line there won't be another great Hawaii quarterback at the helm for Oregon to come back at that?
We want the great Hawaii quarterbacks to stay.
Yeah,
Paul. Why?
Paul, what is this positive?
That's why we have Timmy Chang
great.
to lead the way to show them how to do it.
You're right. You're right.
Good segue there, Craig.
Yeah, I like that.
There you go. That's why he's the man in charge. As we are
joined
joined
get all
by
these guys to stay home and play for the hometown team in a beautiful new stadium and beautiful facilities.
Does Micah still have eligibility at that point? Is COVID year over? Is COVID year over for everybody? No, you're right. So I guess the number 2 Hawaii quarterback will be at Oregon at that point.
We'll let the number 2 guy go.
Yeah, that guy can go over there.
I like that. I love how we got to take a step back there. Like what just happened? No. He kept us on our toes.
Absolutely.
He's like, wait a minute. No, the number 1 quarterback in Hawaii is staying home and playing under Timmy Chang, one of the record breakers for the University of Hawaii.
About great Hawaii quarterbacks.
Yeah.
No, none better.
All right. We do need to step aside for our last break, but when we come back, we'll ask you a little bit more about what you can share on your end with the stadium and everything that's going on. And then another text question. And then we're going to end it off with some really fun questions, actually, just to kind of close out the mood of 2023. So we'll be right back as we are joined by UHAD Craig Angelos on Wake Up in the Den.
Back to more Wake Up in the Den with Ku'ule Agbayani on the Hawaii Sports Radio Network, 95.1 FM and AM 760.
Welcome back to Wake Up in the Den. Ku'ule Agbayani, Paul Brecht, and University of Hawaii Athletics Director Craig Angelos. All right, Craig, we're talking a little bit about the stadium. So from what you can share with our audience and from your perspective and the things that you're dealing with behind the scenes, just shed some light on what the fans need to know that the university specifically is taking into account and working on.
Yeah, it's a good time, in its evolution now, because there seems to be some direction and it's some movement, which I'm really encouraged about. I know there's been discussions and other plans prior to me being here, but we're very supportive of Josh Green's plan. And you saw last week, or maybe a week or two ago, he had that press conference at the Capitol there where he unveiled basically the RFP that's going out. And so what that means to people, because I know a lot of people probably don't realize what that means, and is we're trying to do what they call a NASET, New Aloha Stadium Entertainment District, called NASET. So and I'm on one of the committees that's working with. There's a lot of people that they've brought to the table, a lot of experts, really good experts that are bringing to the table to oversee that direction. So it's moving with a lot of very qualified and good people, because I've built a stadium before out at Florida Atlantic University, so I kind of understand the industry a little bit in that regard. And so that's moving. And the biggest thing is the state's put forth the money. I think it's $350 million up to $400 million, somewhere in between there, towards a stadium. But as we know, they're seeking the developers who can come and probably put more money into the stadium, but also build the affordable housing and all the entertainment districts and all that other amenities that will go along with the stadium. And if it can get done, it'll be a beautiful setup out there. But I think what the RFP means now is, so they put out an RFP, means request for proposal and qualifications from potential developers. So they'll put that out there. These developers know it's coming. They'll develop their plan. They'll present their plan. And then I think sometime in the spring, the committee will decide, maybe limit it to 3 people, and give them time to then go out and, I think almost probably, I forget how long it will be, but they'll be out there to be able to develop their own proposal. And then they'll choose one. And then they'll have 9 months to negotiate with that one developer to see if they can come up with an agreement. And all that time will take, they think by the early part of summer of 2025, they'll know whether they have a deal done with that one developer. So between now and summer of 2025, will be all this movement going on and exploring all these options and seeing if it's financially feasible for the developer and what it looks like for them and who's coming to the table, and then choosing one and then trying to negotiate a deal. Now, if a deal can get done, then they'll start building it, and they should have it done by sometime in 2028. And
Kansas opener.
In
hopefully
time for
before.
us to open up our game. I think if it goes according to plan, it'd be open a little bit, maybe spring of 2028. They can do some other events in there, kind of work out the kinks, and we'll be ready to go in, I think, August of 2028. So that's the plan right now. So I think the real key now is the next point to check in is like that summer 2025. If we have a developer, we're ready to go. If we don't have a developer or there's no plan, then that's where it's going to be a little tricky. Okay, so where do we go from there? So we got to be thinking of all the different options out there. But we're all in with Josh Green's plan, and we're following it closely. And hopefully we'll have a nice setup up there in 2028.
Yeah, and we're keeping it positive here. Paul and I are keeping our fingers crossed, and we have our bet amongst our team here that, hey, Paul and I are on the side that it will get done. Like they said, it's going to get done. Other people on our team aren't as optimistic, but we'll see what happens. That's why it happens.
Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
Some are optimistic, some don't think it will happen. But we're optimistic at UH, and I know our president David Lasner is firmly behind it. Our board of regents are behind it, and so we're hoping that we can bring it to fruition.
All right, last text question. Aloha, what are your expectations for the 2024 Rainbow Warriors?
Boy, that's a great question.
Yeah.
College athletics encompasses so much. I mean, clearly, it's not all about winning, but that's why we play college athletics, is to win. I mean, certainly we want to do it the right way, obey all the NCAA rules. We certainly want to graduate these student athletes, because most of them are not going on to play professionally anyway. And even if they do, it's a short-lived career generally. So they're always going to have a degree and something to fall back on and prepare for, and do, play and go to school concurrently, and try to make sure that they maximize their hopes and dreams. So we want to make sure we're, making sure that happens. And then, of course, we want to win. And And I think the expectation for the coaches, and I think they know it, is to win the conference championship, and get a berth into the NCAA tournament and go as far as they can in the NCAA tournament. Some are wired for that. Like you see the volleyballs are wired for that and are able to win the national championship. Some may not have the resources maybe or wired for that right now, but we're taking a look at all the sports and all their budgets, because budgets are a big thing too. We got to raise money. We got to get a little firmer financial model so we can compete with some of these other schools and even our own conference with things such as facilities, things such as cost of attendance, Alston money. I mean, just resources are a big thing, and we certainly travel. We got to get better at travel. Our football team travels commercially. I'd like to see if we could travel charter, like everybody else on the mainland does, but it's so expensive to do that here. So those are things we're looking at. So there's a lot of things we're looking at, but I think if you boiled it down, we want to make sure our student athletes, are well taken care of in the classroom, and we have a great academic staff that helps them, and they seem to be doing very well. So we want to make sure our graduation rate continues to stay high. We want to make sure that we're winning. We got to win, especially in some of these key sports. I know people are thinking about football, but football's making strides. But keep in mind, and I've learned this since I got here, that prior to Timmy coming, they had 19 players, 19 starters that transferred, and I was told 11 of them were starting in Division I. In Power 5, and that doesn't include Shevin, who's over at San Diego or San Jose State. But 11 of those 19 are starting at Power 5. So, 19 stars that leave, and 11 of those are starting at Power 5. Must have been a pretty good talent pool at that time. But a lot of those guys leave, got to rebuild it. And so hopefully Timmy can get that back up and going again. And I think that's what everyone's looking for, because football's, huge in Hawaii, and everyone's looking at that. So I think that's we got to see real, positive improvement there for next year. And I think Timmy will get us there. But certainly want to win in all of our sports. I know Charlie's done a great job with men's volleyball, and hopefully we can make another title run there. Our basketball teams are doing well. Our volleyball team did well. All of our sports, we want to make sure that the idea is to win the conference championship, get the automatic berth into the NCAA tournament, and then go as far as we can in the NCAA tournament. Some will be able to go farther than others, but they're not all built the same. Tennises of the world, women's track and field, they're kind of individual sports a little bit, so it's harder. You just want to make sure they're qualifying for the NCAAs even individually. So that's clearly our goal, is to graduate our players, win championships, and also be able to raise money, because that's the other thing we're really going to look at this year. I'm doing a study with our people called WWIT. What will it take? We're going to get wristbands. I'll get you a wristband there.
Okay.
WWIT. We can wear those around. But we're trying to do an analysis of what it would take to get up to what level we want to be at, and how we're going to get there. So where we are, where we want to go, and how to bridge the gap there. So the third element, I think, this for 2024 that we want to make a lot of strides in is our ability to raise money, and raise the level of resources we have for our coaches. So there's a lot, running an athletic department is multifaceted. You have 500 student athletes. You got 21 teams. They're all going hard, and you're trying to make sure it all works together. But those are our three goals probably this year, and every year, but especially this year, that we're trying to pursue.
I love it. And we're going to do it. We're going to win. That's what we do in Hawaii.
All we do is win.
All right. We have about 2 minutes left, so we're going to finish it off with some fun questions, very difficult questions. Actually, one
the hard hitters.
One is coming over from big UH supporter Mike Kawazoi. He's like, "What's your favorite local dessert?" Yeah, what's your favorite local dessert that's not hula pie?
Oh, I had that last night. I went to Duke's.
So Craig loves the not sponsored. Craig loves the hula pie at Duke's.
Yeah, I went there last night and had that. Or the Waialae Country Club has a great one.
They do too.
Yeah, that's my favorite. So I guess that's the one I got to go with.
But he said besides hula pie.
Then the malasadas that I had yesterday. I stopped over there yesterday with the family because we had to introduce them to that, and had the cinnamon. The cinnamon ones.
Cinnamon, interesting. Yeah. All right, so, keeping the sweet tooth going. This is actually shout out to Brandon Tamanaha of Warrior All Access, because he put this question on Twitter. What's your favorite Pop-Tart flavor? Because we just had the very viral Pop-Tart bowl. So what's your favorite Pop-Tart flavor?
Pop-Tarts are huge at our house. I mean, you put them in the toaster and then you put a light coat of butter on top. That is
I'm
fantastic.
gonna say that's a delicacy.
Yeah, no, that's
Putting
fantastic. But the
extra.
strawberry
Love
one,
it.
well, no, raspberry one.
Raspberry. I was gonna say strawberry. Strawberry is my favorite.
But I love
raspberry.
strawberries. But the raspberry ones, if you can find them, are really good. And I like the chocolate, the s'mores. I mean, there's a whole slew of them. As you know, I have a sweet tooth.
All right. So, like we said, you've been here for 6 months. So the things on your feet, do you call them flip flops, thongs, or slippas now?
Well, in my first week here, when I was on some shows, they told me there's a few things. One, you call them slippas, and it's not shaved ice, it's shave ice. So those are the two things I did learn. I still am prone to flip flops, but I'm working on the slippas.
Oh, man. I can't believe we're out of time. Maybe we should do an after hours in the den. But
We
for
might
now,
have to.
thank you so much, Craig Angelos, for taking the time to join us on our final show of the year.
Thank you for having me, and I guess I'm going to have to bug you to come back again sometime. So
Yep.
we'll finish up again.
So for Paul, I'm Kule. Have a happy new year. Bye. All right, welcome back again to, well, I guess it's after hours in the den now because we were having so much fun with UH Athletics Director Craig Angelos that we asked him to stay. Unfortunately, he can, mostly to finish up our fun questions that we've had as we ended the show, a little bit about the Pop-Tarts and the hula pie and desserts and the slippas. But I have such a laundry list of additional questions that I wanted to ask you, so I'm excited that you're staying. All right, so we talked about the things that you had to learn when you first got out here, or things people told you. These are the main things that you need to know. So have you become a regular at Zippy's yet?
You know, I've been to Zippy's a number of times. I mean, it's got a great menu. I will say that.
What's
you
your
can get
favorite
anything
thing?
you want. Well, sometimes I vacillate between like the breakfast food, you know, the pancakes, the French toast. So sometimes like the afternoon, I might like breakfast food. So I like that. But that's usually what I usually get breakfast food when I go to Zippy's. I will say that. Sometimes I go with, you know, a sandwich or something like that, but mostly it's breakfast food.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
I don't know if I know anybody who, like anybody else amongst my inner circle, who goes directly for the Zippy's breakfast food. So I like that. It's a unique answer, you know, something a little bit different, because I feel like we normally hear some regular, I don't know, rice and chili bowl. You know, that's a studio favorite.
Yes, don't knock the rice in the chili bowl. Still sticking with our food questions though, does pineapple belong on pizza? Answer wisely.
I usually don't order it on my pizza, but my wife really likes it on her pizza. So I can eat it, but it does seem a little odd to me to have it on a pizza.
All right. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
I have never considered it a sandwich. It's got to be in a hot dog bun, but I've seen it if you slice it in half and then put it on a sandwich and make, I can see that.
I would be more. I think I'd be more concerned by somebody doing, like, if I saw somebody do that at the cookout, I'd probably pull them aside and just be like, "Is everything okay, buddy?" Like,
Well, it's probably
we're
too much
having-
work too, right?
Well, that's kind of what I
Yeah.
mean.
I mean, you just throw it onto a bun and put some mustard. I have put mustard and ketchup on. A lot of people don't like both, but I like both of them.
Me
Maybe
too.
some-
Just don't do it in Chicago.
Yeah.
Only mustard.
Only mustard.
No ketchup. I the other half like walked away from me and was like, I'm not. I don't want to be seen with you putting ketchup on the hot dog or something like in Chicago.
I was
It's,
gonna say,
it's
not in
apparently not a
Chicago.
thing. All right, we'll get off the food topic. What is your favorite type of music and your favorite artist or band?
Well, when I moved to Miami, I really got into R&B.
Really?
All right, so that's all I listen to is R&B. That's really the only thing I listen to. So, like, you know, Bruno Mars is big here. I'm a big Bruno Mars fan. But anything R&B, it could be old R&B or new R&B. Rihanna, I mean, any of it. I'm all into that. I used to listen to the Tom Joyner show all the time in South Florida, going in and out of work or into work every morning. So I'm all into R&B.
He fits our studio vibe, Koo.
I know. So we're looking forward to Usher at the Super Bowl halftime then.
Yeah. I'm a big fan there. So
This is interesting. I would have never guessed. R&B. That's pretty awesome.
He's keeping us on our toes here. I said the unique answer with Zippies, but it keeps getting better. These were needed after hours.
Yes.
I'm very thankful for the additional time, of course.
All right. Christmas just happened, but what is your favorite Christmas movie?
Christmas with the Cranks. We watch that
surprise.
all the time. We watched that 2 or 3 times this past week. That was a favorite.
What is it that makes that one the favorite?
I think the actors are Tim Allen and the other. They're fantastic. But we get a kick out of when the daughter brings her boyfriend home, Enrique. And the way they spell Enrique when they're trying to pick him up, the police officers are picking him up and so they have the signs. They don't know who these people are, and they say Enrique. They don't know how to spell it. So it's kind of a family joke. If we go pick up our kids from the airport or whatever, my wife sometimes will make an Enrique sign and put it there, and everyone gets a laugh out of it. So that's probably our favorite one.
I love that. I love these surprise answers. Now I wish I came up with more questions. I mean, I still have more, but this is by far.
Well, everyone has a story in life,
Yeah. All right. What is your favorite? You can't use the University of Hawaii as an answer for this. So, what's your favorite sports team or teams, and maybe some of your favorite athletes, either previous or current?
Well, pro athletes or pro sports teams. I grew up being a Dallas Cowboy fan when they were all on TV, and their quarterback at the time when I was really, really young was a guy named Craig Morton, and so he had the same name as I did. So when I was really young, that's who I gravitated towards. But they were the only ones on TV during that time too. But I also grew up in San Francisco Giants fans because when I was really young, we lived in San Francisco area, so I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. But I love the Heat in Miami because I gravitated toward the Heat. I love the Phillies. When I was in Philadelphia for a long time, watched the Phillies every night with Bryce Harper. I think college though, outside the University of Hawaii would be like Miami because when I was at Miami, we were really good. We won national championships in football and baseball, and it was kind of an electric time. I mean, they were the Alabama at the time, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now they've dropped way off. But from a college team, that's probably who I follow the most outside of the one I'm at right now.
I know it's crazy to think that The Rock was on that team, but he was not a player necessarily, a key player on that team.
Yeah, it's so funny because I have a picture with myself in The Rock because I was doing compliance at the time, so I knew a lot of these guys. I'd be in the weight room with them, etc. I have a picture of myself in The Rock at a academic function over on campus one day where I had to accompany him. So he was a player and I was the administrator, so we sat together and we got a picture together. So when I pulled that out a few years ago, I got a lot of credibility from the kids. The Rock? But yeah, Dwayne Johnson at the time, but he played behind Warren Sapp. But he did still play a little bit. But he had a great physique for football. He had a great look for football. And now he's really reshaped that when he went to wrestling. But he the thing about him, he is the nicest guy. I mean, even when he was there, he's the nicest guy. And you see him on TV and others, but he's just a normal, really nice guy. If you saw him. So yeah, those were good times back then.
Ooh, I wonder. So you, in a sense, I would imagine, have been able to meet a few different celebrities before their heyday in working in college athletics. Is there anybody whose personality surprised you? It can be good or bad, either way. I don't mind whatever you'd like to do. But is there anybody who surprised you afterwards, or at least surprises you now, where you're like, I know that's an act, or I know that's a great person and they get a tough time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in Miami, they had a lot of number one draft picks. I think during the time I was there was probably, I think they did a poster on it. It was like 21 number one draft picks over a certain time period.
Not bad.
But guys like Ray Lewis. I mean, when you see Ray Lewis as a high school kid coming in, and just see him in colleges as regular guys, and then but then when you go to the pros, then they're getting all that money and they're the big celebrities and they're like bigger than life. But you're like, these guys were just, you knew them when they were in college, just regular guys. And I think they're, deep down, they're all just still regular guys. But I think we don't view it that way when we see people on TV and they're getting paid millions and millions of dollars. But there were some really great ones that came through, really good guys. I mean, I think a guy like Ed Reed, if you remember him, who played for the Ravens. Ed was the nicest guy, and he's still the nicest guy. I saw him at the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame entrance a couple years ago, and talked to him afterward. He still acted like he remembered me.
Hey, that's all you need.
But he's just really a nice, sweet guy. I mean, these guys are really good guys. In college, they're just regular kids, and they grow up and they get older and they make a lot more money. But deep down, they're still just good, regular guys. So I've got nothing but respect for all those Miami guys because they're good guys. You see Greg Olson on, he was there a little after I was there, but they're really good guys. They got a bad rap sometimes, but if you knew them, they were really good guys. Now, some people like coaches. That's another story. Sometimes their private persona and their public persona can be two different things. I've seen that throughout my career where when they're on camera or whatever, people think they're such a nice guy and just seems like it'd be great working with them. And you're like, yeah.
Seems that way, doesn't it?
But when you see them behind closed doors and you see how they react sometimes to people in various situations, they might be just a little bit different than when they are in their public persona. So, but the good thing about Hawaii is you don't have that. I mean, you don't have that at all. I mean, Timmy Chang's about as nice as there is. Iran's about as nice as they are. Lara Beeman. I mean, you go down Rich Hill, Bob Coolin. I mean, you go all the way down. Our track coaches, our soccer coaches, others, just really good people. So that was a real pleasant thing. I was surprised because they're just really good people, under times of stress and not under times of stress.
I'm glad you outlined that because I feel we talk about that sometimes, Ku'ule, on our normal show where people sometimes forget like the college athletes are also just regular people, they're students, but they also in turn they idolize some of these coaches as well where it's like, okay, we also have to remember they're regular people with flaws as well. So I'm glad you were able to articulate that because it's an interesting landscape to have to work with. I am sure. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Shout out to David Matlin, previous athletics director. He had to do all those hirings. I know he got some flack for one coach that is no longer with us, but for the most part, his batting average is pretty good so far with the coaches that he was able to bring in.
Well, yeah, and you during our regular show here, which if you didn't catch, you can also catch on our YouTube on Hawaii Sports Radio Network. You talked about the people of Hawaii and how great they are, and that's something that I had found as well in my moving from the mainland to out here, where it is such a breath of fresh air to go in, and you still work with these people, and they are still exceptionally competitive people. That is not anything that's changed, but they are still so good and so kind and whatnot. And it goes back to what you ended up closing the show with, what you want from the programs. Obviously, you want winners, but you also want to help the University of Hawaii continue to produce great people that come out and the alum that come out that are great. So it's always nice to see our coaches and the people in charge share that value,
All right. So you clearly said you love doing this. You're going to do it forever, but... If you could pick a dream job that you would be automatically educated and qualified for, what would be your dream job? Like when you were a kid, you're like, this is what I want to be when I grew up.
Well, as a kid, everyone wants to be a pro athlete. I mean, we all do, and then we find out that the talent level may not be there. But the one job I've tell my wife this too is if I could change over right now, or if I had to, or had the talent that I could really get a kick out of are these guys because I love to go to Broadway plays and the conductor down in the pit, the orchestra conductor down there. I just would love to be one of those guys. Those guys are so fascinating because I just love the way these guys are so talented. These musicians are so talented in those Broadway plays. But the person who's down there conducting, that's what I thought. I'd love to do that if I don't have that kind of musical talent at all, but I love to see that. Love to hear it.
I love this. Craig, you are like the best at this. Like you are throwing out answers that are one, I wouldn't expect you to say, and two, I wouldn't really expect anyone to say like that one. I like that too.
Yeah, and that wasn't really rehearsed. I came across that like a few years ago when I was living in Brooklyn. and living in New York, and we'd always gone to Broadway plays, like to, not all the time, but I'm fascinated by those people and that talent they have. And maybe it's because I don't have the talent, and that's why maybe I love it so much. Fascinated by it.
It's crazy because, like Paul keeps saying, you're totally speaking our language because you're a Cowboys fan. Our station has the Cowboys. We're both like performing arts kids, and you like the music. And shout out to the conductors. I'm like, whoa, you're like our new bestie now.
But you guys were probably much more accomplished musicians than I did. I played the trumpet till I was like in high school, and I begged my mother to let me give up playing the trumpet because I wasn't probably good at it. Probably because I never practiced. I don't know if I didn't have a knack for it or I just never practiced, but I just assumed I wasn't good at it, so I was able to give it up.
Have you tried the ukulele yet?
I have not tried that. I bet you're probably pretty good at that.
I am not.
No?
I can dance hula, but I cannot play the ukulele. I learned you learn basics in elementary school here, but I kind of forget all of it all. See, you got to put that on your 2024 list of things to try to do.
And I'm glad you told me how to say it too, because in the mainland, you'd say like ukulele, right?
Yeah, don't say it like that.
I have also changed my pronunciation since coming from the mainland. So it was something that I was glad was shared to me before I had to say it on radio.
Uh-oh. We edit that out.
No, it's fine. All right. I know we don't want to take up too much of your time, but since we are going into a new year, I know during the live show, we did ask about the Rainbow Warriors and goals. Do you have any, aside from, learning to play the ukulele, what are maybe some of your New Year's, I hate the term resolutions, but I do like to say New Year's goals. So what are your maybe one or two personal New Year's goals that you may have?
Well, if you want to get real personal, I mean, since I've come here, I've eaten like so much. I go out to lunch, dinner, breakfast. Sometimes I could hit. Most of the time it was like at least 2 times a day. There's times it could be as much as 4 times a day. I've had that happen too. So it's one of those things I need to get back into shape. So again, we all say that on January 1, Now it's going to be January 2 because we're going to enjoy this January 1 and then January 2 we're going to start. But that's probably the number one thing because it's like, how did this happen? But it's like really I've come here and hit it hard with meeting as many people as I can and getting out. And a lot of times when you meet them, you meet them at a dinner spot or breakfast spot or lunch spot. And so you end up eating along the way. And then, of course, the desserts here are fantastic. So you just put it down. You're like, I'll just figure that out later. I'll worry about it later. But now later is here. So, yeah, that's my number one. That's the number one goal. But other than that, you try to live a consistent life, month in, month out. So you don't have to just like regroup every January and start good habits again. Especially as you get older, you can't really always pick it back up. But this one, I'm not going to let get away again. I guarantee it. But this will be a little bit of a long haul here. But I'm dedicated towards that goal right now.
I love that. That and again the ukulele goal.
The ukulele. Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be like not like Jake Shimabukuro or anything, but maybe just a simple song.
Well,
just enough.
I might have to try that. Yeah. I was sent a guitar from the AD at Vanderbilt because like when you go to games, they give you little gifts. Usually it's food or a food basket or something like that. Well, being in the SEC, I guess, and also being in Nashville, they have a little money. But she sent all the visiting ADs that would come instead of giving it to you when you come there, and you have to take it back with you. She sent it through the mail, and it was a guitar that had UH's logo on it. Wow. From Nashville. It was a very cool thing. I don't know if it's a high-end guitar or not, but it looks great. So maybe I could learn to play that. But also I need to learn to pronounce my Hawaiian words better. That's another one. I got to get better at that. Not like the ukulele. I got to, now I'd learn that one.
Yeah. Hey, we appreciate it. I mean, just like Paul's very much in tune with trying to get better day by day with all of the, not only Hawaiian words, but we call a lot of like high school and obviously University of Hawaii games with a lot of the Samoan last names. So yeah. Paul's been steadily improving as the year went on, and he's going to continue to do so. So both of you guys, I love it. Good job.
My Hawaiian Duolingo is going crazy right now. If I can say so myself. Either way, a big 2024 on the way for everybody in this Wake Up studio. So I'm really excited for us. Though I do feel I feel getting back in shape. I have a wedding in 7 months. I got to get in shape for. So
All right. Last, but now that you bring that up, no, I was going to say last question, but now second to the last question, Craig, since you've been married for a while and our young Paul Brecht here is about to get married next year, what is some marriage advice that you can bestow upon this young man right here?
Try to keep everything light. Don't ever have a serious discussion once the sun goes down. Okay, because that just never works. This whole thing about don't go into bed, don't go to sleep, angry or whatever. I don't buy that at all, because what happens is when you get into deep discussions late at night, that's usually when things fall apart. It's dark outside, we're tired, things like that, and it's going to go downhill. So it's like, take a time out. We'll pick it up tomorrow when the sun is out. We're feeling refreshed. We've gone through our cool down period. That's the number one thing. Go through your 24-hour self-imposed cool down period and never have serious discussions late at night.
I love it.
Those are excellent rules and pieces of advice. I appreciate
it could go
those
on, I'm
immensely.
sure. I've learned a few things over the years. But.
All right, final thing before we have to let you go, this is what I would usually ask, in the live show, but I know we were up against the time, but what are just your final words for all of our amazing University of Hawaii fans out there?
I would say stay faithful and hopeful, because I think we've got a lot of people all wanting the same thing for University of Hawaii athletics: the legislature, the board of regents, the fans, the donors, the players, the students, student body, and so everyone's rowing in the same direction. They may have different ideas to how to get there, but we're all really united and aligned. And I think that's the thing. If we can stay aligned and develop a plan of where we want to get to, then everyone's going to be proud of this school and proud of their program, proud of their football program, especially. I know that's a big thing here. So we'll eventually get there with the stadium. We'll eventually get there with the wins and losses. We'll eventually get there with the budget. And so the sky is not falling on intercollegiate athletics. It's not falling on the University of Hawaii. There's a bright future ahead, and I think people just need to stay positive, stay engaged, and do their part, whether it be just buying a ticket and coming out to a game or anything more. But just stay engaged, because I think we're on the right track, and I'm hopeful for the future. It's going to take a little bit more heavy lifting because of our stadium issue, and we'll work through the financial issues and, of course, the NCAA issues itself and conference realignment. But to me, it's an exciting time to be in college athletics, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic that we'll do well here.